Hello everybody, I'm Cantonese Cat. Hey everybody, Cantonese Cat here. Good morning. I'm on Monday. Sorry I was absent for the entire weekend. I really just need to kind of take some time with family and things like that. But here we are, we're back. This is Bitcoin Daily Chart. A lot of people are getting really disillusioned. We think that it's going to go all the way down to 80,000. If you're looking at the pattern here, it certainly looks a little bit like a head and shoulder pattern, doesn't it? I never really take these things into like all seriousness because a lot of times these things just don't work out. The win rate of head and shoulder pattern are actually quite low. The issue though is if you do take this into a grain of salt, let's say if this is two shoulder and this is the head, then you're talking about potential target would be, somewhere around like 80,000 or so, right? If this ends up breaking down. Because the top here is around 106, 108K, and right now the neckline is around like 94K, so presumably it's going to be around like 80,000, somewhere around there. The question is always, does it have to go all the way down there? And the answer is, I don't think anybody really knows the answer to that. Technical analysis is really based on probability, probabilistic, type thing. There are a lot of narratives out there that are getting people kind of scared. They're talking about the yield curve, talking about having to fill gaps or the CME gaps, having to worry about global liquidity, taking a dive. There are a lot of really kind of these different scares out there, right? Global liquidity taking a dive, right? A lot of these different kind of scares out there. Now the question is, does it have to crash all the way down to 80,000? And the answer is, I don't think anybody really knows. I think it's always good to mentally prepare for that possibility. But to say that it absolutely has to happen is still a little bit more educated guess, right? I wouldn't necessarily, and this is just my own thoughts, and in terms of what my own action is, I wouldn't necessarily think that it's necessarily going to happen. Because if I think it's absolutely going to happen, then I would sell and I try to buy that lower, right? But because there's no guarantee, and because overall, if you look at a higher time frame here, let me just go ahead and zoom out here to the monthly. You look at a higher time frame here, it still looks like it's forming higher highs and higher lows. A lot of people are also scared about this candle over here, which is a little bit of a gravestone shooting star type candle. And you can see that previously you got a shooting star right there, you got a shooting star right there. It didn't really work out very well, does it? Another shooting star right there, I suppose, right? So we got a lot of people really all scared about it. Now, the question is, do a shooting star always have to work out negatively? The answer to that question would be to look at other charts, right? This is the Ethereum monthly chart. And let's look for some of these shooting stars and see whether or not they turn out to be really scary. Now I'm spotting one maybe over here. Now this one is a little bit of a green one, so it may not be, what people are like, oh, it's red right now, so this doesn't apply. But there's the shooting star here. It didn't really go down that bad, right? It's a little bit bearish, a little bit toppy, but it's not too bad. Looking back at history too and see if we see another one of these shooting star. I would say like over here back in February 2021, this is a little bit of shooting star formation here. It looks very, very toppy, right? Just end up having further bullish continuation. So they don't necessarily always have to work out. And I'm going to pull the S&P 500 here and look at these shooting star here too. You can see maybe that's another shooting star candle that should be a little bit worried. Here's a shooting star candle that end up having bullish continuation next. Here's a couple of shooting star candles, just end up having bullish continuation. Here's another recent shooting star here around just around October that ended up being reversed with a big giant green candle here in November, right? So I wouldn't just necessarily take into a single isolation of a candle to think that things are going to have to happen that way or this way. I don't think that it necessarily has to, right? Now, does that mean that maybe next month in January you might end up having a little bit of a initial bearish continuation before further bullish continuation? Is possible, right? But I just wouldn't let that candle here scare me. If you just look at the monthly chart here, just kind of zoom out here, it does follow some really great market symmetry, and it has been respecting from arc to arc to arc, right? And right now we just broke this arc, back tested arc for about 7 months, and we were getting ready to go to the next level. The next level could be the horizontal level here around 20,000. If it passes that, it goes to something ridiculous like 600 200,000 or something ridiculous, right? Do I think it's going to get up there? No, I wouldn't necessarily think so, but I still don't think the bull market is over. I think there's a potential for it to get to 200,000, and we'll see kind of how it reacts over there, probably sometime in 2025. We'll see how it reacts, but so far I'm not really disillusioned with the way that, Bitcoin is kind of behaving. If you're looking at the weekly chart here on, let me see here, on Bitcoin, you can see that it basically kind of got rejected up here, right? And sometimes when it got rejected up there at a level like that, people think that it might have crashed all the way down to like 73,000, backtest the horizontal zone over here, which technically is valid, except for the fact that this is Bitcoin. It doesn't have to do what you think it's going to do. It can just go on and just keep on going on and not backtest anything here for a long period of time. You can just keep going on here for a very, very long period of time. It doesn't really have to do necessarily what you want it to do. But yeah, it got rejected up here, and so far it's trying to find support. The question is, what kind of support are we having here? Well, it's not going to be on the weekly. You're not going to see like any Ichimoku cloud support or anything like that. But on the Super Ichi, so far on a weekly, it still looked relatively bullish, even though it did get rejected up here. It's trying to find support underneath there. You got the Super Ichimoku supports all the way down here around 88,000 with the Super Ichi Kijin and the Ichimoku Tenkan. So that's another range over here you can potentially find support at. And you can also have like 78,000 down here could also be potentially support, right? The other thing that I normally look at would be the boring support band is way down here around 81,000, right? So all of this is entirely possible in terms of technicals. It is possible to come back down, but it doesn't have to, right? It doesn't have to come all the way back down. Just like over here, it doesn't have to crash all the way back down to the level here down below. It's just, Bitcoin's going to do its own thing. We'll look at a little bit of a lower, actually, let me look at this chart here. If you look at a little bit of a lower time frame here, look at the daily in terms of what the daily could be doing. You have a Gann chart over here too. I drew this back in the August 5th low here, which is the recent low pivot. And you can see that it's been just basically breaking arc after arc after arc. And it's been hanging around here, around this arc here. Now, if I just zoom in here a little bit, you can see that it's kind of dipping into the arc over here, which makes it possible for it to go down further to 91,000. That's entirely possible, right? It could even just keep going down, even if it makes back above the arc here, it can just keep going down here, right? Or it could just go down here and backtest the arc here at the below, which it did multiple times. And it does look like a little bit of a head and shoulder look to it, right? Slamming into that area, right? There are a lot of wicks down here below. Which tells me that there's demand zone down here. It keeps on getting tested. We'll see what happens. I still see some potential support. None of these are deterministic. They're all probabilistic, right? But you are basically, on the daily chart here, you are basically bouncing from one part of the Super Ichi cloud to another. And on the daily chart, you're basically bouncing from one part of the Ichimoku cloud to another. Now, I'm not gonna lie, right now is inside the Ichimoku cloud. The cloud is thick, right? Doesn't mean that it has to break through and get all the way down to the bottom of the cloud here around like 84, 85,000. Possibly, but again, probabilistic, not deterministic. Before it gets down there, you still have a lot of these different support zones before it gets down there, right? And there's a potential chance for it to go down. A lot of people think that it has to go down further and just makes another leg down lower for another few months, just because we spent almost the entire year around this range over here. Now, the fact that we spent an entire year over here in this range and we broke above the range actually make me feel more bullish about it. Just like how we spent another range, like entire time range over here, and we broke above that, we never really had to come back and back test like 30,000, even though a lot of people are calling for that. And it just ended up going a lot higher, right? I'm also going to zoom out here. You can also see how the current structure here looks very similar to the current structure over here, right? There's a lot of similarities between here and here. And if you also put out some of the indicators here, look at Ichimoku, you can also see that over here, we did break down into the cloud and backtest the bottom of the cloud over here. We're kind of touching the cloud over here. So maybe a similar thing would play out. It could go down further, right? A lot of people calling for 80,000 or something like that. I wouldn't necessarily call for that, but because I don't think anybody really knows exactly what's going to happen. Here is the beach. He kind of dips down inside and underneath of it a little bit here. Right here, it could have dipped down all the way down to like 91,000, maybe a little bit lower, wick down a little bit lower before finding support. Possible, right? But I just want to kind of show you, I think we're getting to some support level here on the lower time frame. And all of these like head and shoulder pattern on a diagonal doesn't always have to work out. So yeah, just something to kind of keep in mind. We've been saying, a lot of us have been saying, a lot of people that I generally like follow or talk to are saying this area over here is very similar to this area over here. So it is expected actually for you to get stalled up here somewhere. And it's expected for you to spend at least several weeks, if not a couple of months, up right around at this level because we end up doing that before the next leg up, right? So I just don't want to be that deterministic that Bitcoin has to do anything. You're always going to have some kind of scary formation. Even for the last bull cycle, there's a very scary formation. It looks like it's just going to roll over here, but it didn't, right? Looks like it's just going to roll over here, but it didn't, right? So I don't necessarily want to think that just because the current bear structure is, in place, this is Bitcoin can do whatever it wants. It did end up breaking down, end up wicking down, end up grabbing a lot of liquidity down here below before going further. There's always a possibility that Bitcoin can do this. There's always a possibility that Bitcoin can do this, right? So there's not really any deterministic thoughts in terms of that. The way I see it, I'd like to look at higher time frame, and I still think that the higher time frame, even though a lot of people are focusing on the shooting star candle and are expecting a lot lower prices, I just don't really, necessarily buy into the concept that this is like the cycle top. There are a lot of things that are going against it. I actually think that, if anything, this looks a little bit similar to this area over here before the big giant expansion. But they didn't want people to be too bullish yet on Bitcoin. Maybe that's why they're kind of holding it back. The reason why you had a little bit of a hammer top kind of look here to it is because we are just simply respecting the upper Bollinger Band here on a monthly, And whenever you go a little bit too far above the upper Bollinger Band, you're getting punished, right? So I think we're getting ready for a more parabolic move up, but this candle here is getting a lot of people scared. I'm not that worried, but I understand why a lot of people are, because price has gone all the way up to 108,000. A lot of people expecting just keep pushing up higher, but decided to go down like 15% all the way down to like 82,500. That can certainly reset a lot of the sentiment. Right. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot more to add to that. I'm going to talk a little bit more about a few Bitcoin proxies and kind of share with you my thoughts in terms of what's happening. I think that right now you have Microstrategy here. It's kind of broken down the 1.4 and 4 level. It's kind of like almost last week, almost perfectly like bounced off of the arc here. This week it looks like it wants to start the week down below the arc here, so we'll see. I think the bottom of the arc is around on this week is going to be around like 322, 323 range, somewhere around there. So we'll see whether or not this arc here holds. If not, then it could come down and close the gap. We're at the area where right now where we're testing support, right? Big giant push up on high volume and low volume back testing. These things are not out of the ordinary, and it could wick down all the way down to close the gap. If it wants to, it can wick all the way down to 1.272 if it wants to, but I don't think anybody really knows how low it's going to go. So because I'm not wanting to bet, and because this downtrend here is on relatively low volume, I'm just going to keep holding my shares and see what happens. I still think that MicroStrategy still has some ways to go before stopping, and this is just one of the areas that it has to get stalled at because it's a very, very important fit level 1.618, right? Bitcoin did the same thing, by the way. Bitcoin basically did the exact same thing from the previous all-time high here in that cycle to down here below, and it's getting rejected here at the 1.272, right? So Microstrategy is a little bit more bullish than Bitcoin, actually, and it's getting rejected. And it could correct more if Bitcoin wicks down. Sure, Microstrategy can go down a lot more, but I don't think anybody really knows for sure. Higher highs, higher lows. I don't think the cycle is over yet based on cycles, based on seasonality. I think it's most likely going to keep going. But we'll see, right? Coinbase, a lot of people also worry about Coinbase. Sure, it certainly looks like we're going to start the week down around 260. If I basically just kind of show you here, this downtrend here is on low volume. So I'm not really that scared. I think it's a low volume back test of the arc here. And if I just turn off the volume here and kind of give you a little bit more of a closer look in terms of what's happening this week. Well, this week looks like it's wanting to start around underneath the arc right here around 260, right? And yeah, how low is it going to go? I don't think anybody really knows. Is it going to back test it to 0.786 here? Not necessarily. Here we're a little bit of a false breakout. And here we're basically just kind of back testing this horizontal zone over here. And so far it looks like it's holding. And you've got a big horizontal zone over here. There's a lot of price history. And I think price simply had a hard time breaking above that for months. You broke up off of it. And right now there's a little bit of healthy back test. The healthy back test could go all the way down here. I'm not going to lie, it can go all the way down to like 246 or something like that. That's entirely possible. That would still be a bullish chart here for Coinbase, right? So yeah, I think that a higher low is warranted, and once it finds its higher low, it's going to try to find a higher high in a bull trend, right? Now, one stock that has really been getting a lot of people triggered, and one that has been really getting a lot of people really scared, is Cleanspark. There are a couple of ways to kind of look into Cleanspark here. One way was to look at the GAN, but there are a lot of things I actually want to say about Cleanspark. Because a lot of people are really disillusioned with Cleanspark, which I think is completely warranted, right? It's trying to find some support level here down below, right? You can even go down a little bit further, and it would still be a reasonable support level. Now I'm going to do 180 here to kind of show some other market symmetry. I'm going to make that 1 here too. And you can see that even if it's if I change the GAN into these different multiples of 45s, if I do 1 here, you can still see that it's at a pretty decent support zone. So I don't know. I mean, I could be completely wrong, completely off base here, but sorry, this is CoinL. That's my Cleanspark chart over here. Well, actually, CoinL looks great. I think it's getting to pretty close to a support zone here too. Compared to Coinbase, CoinL, which is a 2x ETF, actually looks pretty good. Now this is Cleanspark. I apologize for that. Cleanspark is starting out pretty bad right now. It's back in the single digits. A lot of people get really scared right here. What if it forms a lower low over here, right? Because it just doesn't look like it wants to stop at all. Last week is really pathetic volume over here, but it did have a mild Basu candle, so it does favor a little bit of a bearish continuation. And certainly so far in the morning here, pre-market is 9.47. A lot of people are really upset about Cleanspark, and they're trying to find somebody to blame. I don't know what to tell you. I never tell you to buy or sell. I don't really care what you do. I'm holding my cost average right now. I think it's like 11.5 or something like that. So I'm down about 16%, holding shares only. I'm going to let it do its thing. It is one of the weaker the Bitcoin miner charts because it was very strong in 2023. And for so far 2024, it's been absolutely pathetic, right? It's been outperforming Bitcoin over here. It's been underperforming Bitcoin over here. So who knows what 2025 is going to bring us? Maybe it's going to have some continuation of underperformance because that's what people think is going to happen just because the last 12 months have been doing so. Or maybe not. It's hard to say, right? There are a few things that I don't really like about the chart. I'm going to tell you right off the bat. One is that if you look at the monthly Ichimoku, it's being rejected off the cloud here. multiple times, include like the entire year of 2024 has been rejected over here, right? You are having a little bit of a bearish engulfing candle here, so a lot of things are not looking favorable for Cleanspark. Look at this time frame, look at this chart, and also the one thing that I was looking for that hasn't really panned out was that it would backtest a rising 20-month moving average and would hold. So far, it's not holding. So far, it's just a big giant candle down here, and only got maybe 2 days to kind of close the candle here. Now, do I get scared whenever you look something like that? That does get me a little bit more cautious, I'm not going to lie. You're supposed to be more bullish at support, but sometimes support do break, and it does make you wonder whether or not there's some additional downside risk. And it's getting to the point I'm looking at Cleanspark, I'm like, yeah, the technicals here hasn't really been working out. Now, those are the kind of bearish thoughts that I have. What I'm going to do at Cleanspark, I'm going to hold, because I still see quite a few bullish things that are going on with Cleanspark right now that are, when I'm uncertain, I hold, right? And I'm not going to tell you what to do because I really don't care what you do. But I do want to bring out a couple of things. One here is on a monthly here. There's an order block detector. Looks like there's a big giant order block zone down here below. Now, this is done by Lux Algo. And if you're interested in looking at that, you can search the indicator here. You can search order block detector. And it would pop up, right? You can even look at the read more thing over here. And it would basically just tells you that, the usage is common to for participants to execute orders incrementally, right? You're going to have some bearish order blocks where you sell. You're going to have some bullish order blocks where you buy, right? Generally, these are some pretty important pivot points. So it's very possible that right now we've got a big giant buy zone over here on the monthly after we had a sell zone up here that had been really bringing a lot of downward pressure here. Maybe we're got a little bit of a buffer zone down here to have a lot of people buying here on the monthly chart, right? For people that are thinking a little bit more longer term. Doesn't mean that you're not going to have some further bearish continuation down. It's always possible. Now, the other thing too is if I do the 20-month moving average, you can see how sometimes you undershoot it, sometimes you overshoot it. Right here, you also undershoot it here a little bit, right? So it's not a perfect kind of level here to look at. Now, if I'm zooming out here a little bit, if I do a 6-week chart, you can see how this really helps smooth out where this is the perfect rejection here, perfect support, rejection, right? Rejection, right? So far as the support level over here, right? And I think there's a possibility we might back test the support level down here below again, right? And we'll see, because I think Bitcoin's going to keep going higher. I think that most likely we're going to find support here rather than breaking down like we did over here. So we'll see. There are just quite a few things here that still get me feeling okay with Cleanspark here. Now zooming in actually. If I look at the 100-week moving average, it looks like it wants to back test it here one more time. And so it just wants to touch it one more time here. So right now the 100-week moving average is around 9.53. And we'll see whether or not we find support there this week or not, right? It looks like Cleanspark really likes this 100-week moving average. You see how there's resistance, support, right? Resistance, flip support, right? So I'm going to lean a little bit more bullish here, especially since the 100-week moving average is still upsloping. Now you can say that, hey, it didn't hold a support over here last time. You'll be right, right? Over here last time was also December of 2021. And that was also really, a year into Bitcoin having that huge exhaustive top. It looks like it could break down, right? So you're talking about a little bit of a different context here. You have this exhaustive top. It looks like form a lower high here, about to break down. But whenever Cleanspark broke down was also when Bitcoin was basically looking very, very exhausted here. If I just pull up the RSI here, you can see the RSI really is sloping down here, right? You can say the same thing here too, right? With Bitcoin, with the RSI kind of sloping down. A lot of people are kind of calling for a top here, with the exception that I don't think Bitcoin has really been that parabolic quite just yet here on the monthly chart. So I'm not gonna, necessarily call for the top here. You can also see that previously you have these different cycles here where you can have a lower high here and it just keeps on pushing up higher, right? The 4-year cycle, I think, is still in play. If you don't think that the 4-year cycle is in play, then I think that there is a chance for you to exit out and just don't look back. I don't really advocate you to be in some of these stocks because they're extremely speculative, and I'm in it, but I'm also only allocate maybe around 12 to 13% of my portfolio in these stocks. So yeah, I mean, whatever it is that you want to do right now is in the inflection point, and they're always going to make it super scary for you before things turn around. The sentiment here for Cleanspark is completely different from the sentiment over here for Cleanspark, right? The sentiment over here for Cleanspark was actually pretty good. You also have to take into consideration too when it comes to the technical analysis part of it, because Cleanspark didn't really become a Bitcoin miner until December 2020. So a lot of the stuff before that ends up taking into account of like the Ichimoku cloud into the account of like the monthly moving average actually doesn't necessarily apply, because it's fundamentally a completely different stock here. If you just look at from December 2020 up to here, you actually see a big giant cup here, a big giant handle here. Now, can the handle go down further? Yes, the candle looks getting a little bit big here, and it makes you wonder, I don't really like the way it looks, But I just have to say, I'm showing you like the bearish signs, the bullish signs, and I'm going to make you decide. You're the boss for your own destiny, right? Now, looking into other stocks here, actually, I'm a lot more bullish on the way that the other ones here are looking. I'm going to just go through Mara here because I feel like there's a lot of Bitcoin miners. I want to end the video early. A lot of people are really kind of focused on Cleanspark, so I just want to kind of clear the air in terms of what my thoughts are in case if you care. I don't know if you care or not. But Mara actually is looking pretty decent. You got some pretty scary, like, three-back crow kind of thing looking here. A lot of people worry for prices kind of plummeting all the way down, right? All this is happening on low volume with a recent high volume buy, right? So you are breaking down the Buran support band here a little bit, but that's okay. Sometimes it can break underneath and it just keeps on shooting up. Like, it's not an absolute thing, right? You can even like overshoot it over here like multiple times. It just ends up making a very, very, very big low after that when it's not able to hold, right? So that doesn't really bother me all that much. I like the fact that Mara is still got an inside candle here on low volume here for the month of December. It's simply just waiting for the Bollinger Band to expand. It's got a 20-month moving average going up as support. It's got a lot of really nice things kind of going for it still, right? Now, it is broken underneath a lot of these resistance levels here again. For example, it's broken underneath the weekly Ichimoku. It is still holding in the middle of the Supi-ichi here. And it looks like $18 is a very important zone that is just one to kind of gravitate to. If you just don't use any indicators here at all, it looks like $18 is a very important zone over here, right? So yeah, I wanted to go back to that level, want to gravitate that to that level, oscillate around here for the entire year. The question is this a big giant distributed top or is it a big giant reaccumulation zone? The answer looking at the volume is reaccumulation. If you're also looking at the Fintel data here, it's also a big giant reaccumulation zone over here. And if you just look at Mara's, Fintel.io info, you can see that throughout the entire time in Q3 and Q4, even though Mara did nothing, there's a huge increase in institutional buying or accumulation here. And this is happening when the dilution actually is a lot less than institutional accumulation here. So I'm actually quite bullish here for Mara for a lot of different reasons. Yeah, I mean, none of this is deterministic. Even though I'm bullish, it doesn't mean that I'm advising you to buy or sell. Again, I don't really care about any of that. All I can say right now is trying to figure out its own thing here. Even if it goes all the way back down to 16, it's still going to be back testing a range. It's just been ranging here for an entire year, right? And the selling pressure has been on declining volume, buying pressure has been on increasing volume. So I'm a little bit more bullish on Mara here. And those are kind of my thoughts. I know that people are tired of me talking about Bitcoin miners. A lot of them are. So I just want to kind of clear the air and kind of let you know what my thoughts are in case if you care, right? Yeah, right now Bitcoin is not doing very hot right now this morning. Completely honest, we're looking at this level going down here, which is basically hitting into the Ichimoku cloud, right? It could break down. It could very well break down. The daily charts here are not as precise. You can see sometimes it kind of get inside and outside of it. I am a lot more interested in the higher time frame stuff, whether or not it would hit the Subaichi Tenkan here. Has been serving support here. Would it break down? It breaks down. It can go all the way down to 87, 88,000. That could be it, or it could go down all the way down to 78,000. All these things are possible. We'll see how it goes, right? All I know is that right now the downside volume is not that great. Here, the entire top over here, the volume is not that great. So we'll see. You'll see whether or not this accelerates to the downside or if it ends up just bouncing to the upside. I don't think anybody's really going to be able to tell you that, right? I don't think anybody's really going to be able to tell you that. All I know right now is that this is still serving as support. And it's a little bit overextended. I'm not buying Bitcoin here. I bought Bitcoin a lot lower, but in terms of miners, I have been allocating that throughout the entire 2024. We'll see where it takes us. I'm going to keep this video a little bit short here to 30 minutes. Anyway, take care. Bye.